The massive Hyde ship cast a shadow over New York's broken skyline. Queen Iris stood at her command center, her iridescent wings folded neatly behind her as she watched the chaos unfold below. Her mandibles clicked in amusement as another human aircraft exploded against her ship's shields. Such primitive creatures, she communicated to her hive mind. The collective consciousness of billions of her children echoed her thoughts. Humans were nothing more than another species to be added to the swarm, another world to be claimed for their ever-growing empire. The invasion had begun 3 days ago. The swarm ships appeared simultaneously over every major city on Earth. Humanity's military forces responded exactly as Queen Iris had predicted, with uncoordinated violence and desperate attempts at communication. Down on the streets, people ran in panic as the smaller swarm drones descended. These worker soldiers, each the size of a large dog, moved with perfect coordination. Their chitinous armor deflected bullets, and their compound eyes glowed with an eerie green light as they pursued their targets. In the United Nations building, what remained of Earth's leadership gathered for an emergency session. General Michael Roberts stood before the assembly, his uniform crisp despite the chaos outside. "The aliens have taken control of Moscow, Beijing, and London," he reported, his voice grave. "Our weapons barely scratch their ships, and conventional armies are useless against their mind-controlled troops." The room erupted in panicked discussions. On the large screen behind them, live footage showed the fall of Paris. The Eiffel Tower stood as a silent witness as swarms of alien drones herded civilians into collection centers. Queen Iris observed all of this through her connected drones. She had conquered 17 worlds before Earth, and each victory followed the same pattern. First came fear, then resistance, and finally submission. These humans would be no different. But something wasn't right. Her drones reported unusual difficulties in establishing mental control over human subjects. Where other species quickly fell under the swarm's telepathic influence, human minds showed strange resistance. "Increase the psychic output," she commanded. Billions of drones adjusted their mental frequencies in perfect synchronization. In Times Square, a group of humans dropped to their knees, clutching their heads as the enhanced psychic wave washed over them. But still, complete control eluded the swarm. It was like trying to grasp smoke. The harder they pushed, the more human minds seemed to slip away. Queen Iris moved closer to her viewing screen, her antennae twitching with irritation. She focused on one human in particular, a soldier who continued fighting even as others around him fell to the psychic assault. He moved with purpose, leading civilians to safety while engaging her drones with surprising effectiveness. Interesting, she thought. Their neural patterns are unlike anything we've encountered. The swarm had always relied on their ability to dominate other species mentally. Physical conquest was merely the first step. True victory came through absorbing a species into the hive mind. But these humans, with their chaotic, individual thoughts, presented an unexpected challenge. A drone commander approached the queen, its head bowed in submission. "My queen, we have secured 60% of the planet's major population centers. However, we're encountering increased resistance in multiple locations. The humans are adapting to our tactics." Queen Iris dismissed the commander with a wave of her clawed hand. She had expected Earth to fall within hours, like all the others. Instead, pockets of resistance were growing stronger. Reports came in of humans developing countermeasures, of small groups successfully destroying drone clusters. "Deploy the warrior caste," she commanded. The order rippled through the hive mind. Across the planet, massive pods ejected from the high ships, containing larger, more powerful versions of the worker drones. As night fell over New York, Queen Iris watched the warrior drones join the battle. She felt a strange sensation, something she hadn't experienced in centuries of conquest. Was it doubt? No, impossible. These humans were merely taking longer to subdue than expected. They would break, like all the others. Yet as she observed another group of humans successfully evacuating despite her drone's best efforts, Queen Iris couldn't shake the feeling that this conquest would be different. These humans, with their stubborn individuality and unpredictable nature, might prove to be more troublesome than she had initially thought. Little did she know, this was just the beginning of a conflict that would challenge everything she believed about strength, control, and the nature of intelligence itself. Commander James Stone watched the burning horizon from the bunker's observation post. 5 days had passed since the invasion began, and major cities worldwide had fallen to the swarm. The distant sound of explosions mixed with the alien hum of high ships overhead. "Status report," he ordered, turning to face the small group of survivors in the command center. The underground facility, hidden deep in the Rocky Mountains, had become one of humanity's last strongholds. Lieutenant Ray wiped sweat from his forehead as he pointed to the digital map. "We lost contact with the European command an hour ago. The Asian Defense Network went dark shortly after. We're getting scattered signals from Australia and some parts of South America. But that's it." Stone studied the map, noting the expanding red zones that marked swarm-controlled territory. The alien strategy was methodical. They targeted communication centers first, then military installations, and finally civilian populations. "What about the mind control resistance program?" Stone asked, turning to Dr. Wilson, a neurologist who had been studying the swarm's telepathic abilities. The doctor adjusted her glasses, dark circles under her eyes showing days of endless work. "We've made a breakthrough. The swarm's telepathy works by synchronizing brainwave patterns with their hive mind. But human brains are different. We're too chaotic, too individual. Some people are naturally more resistant than others." Stone nodded. He had seen it firsthand. Soldiers who could resist the alien influence longer than others. "Can we use this?" "Maybe," Dr. Wilson replied. "We're working on a device that could amplify our natural resistance, but we need more time." The bunker shook as something massive exploded above ground. Dust fell from the ceiling, and warning lights flashed. A young soldier burst into the room, his face pale. "Commander, Warrior-class drones have found the ventilation shafts. They're trying to break through." Stone grabbed his rifle. "How long until they breach?" "Minutes, maybe less." The commander turned to his people. Each face showed fear, but also determination. They were soldiers, scientists, and survivors, all that remained of humanity's organized resistance in North America. "Dr. Wilson, get your research team to the emergency tunnel. Lieutenant Ray, take half our forces and escort them. The rest of us will hold the line." As people rushed to their positions, Stone's mind raced through combat scenarios. Traditional tactics were useless against the swarm. They moved as one, anticipated standard military responses, and adapted quickly. But they struggled against irregular warfare, against humans who acted unpredictably. The first warrior drone broke through the ventilation shaft in a shower of sparks and metal. It was massive, nearly filling the corridor, its armored carapace gleaming under the emergency lights. More followed, their compound eyes glowing with menacing green light. Stone's team opened fire. Regular bullets bounced off the drone's armor, but the special hollow-point rounds they'd developed caused damage. The creatures screamed, a sound like metal scraping metal, as they charged forward. "Fall back by pairs," Stone ordered. "Keep moving, don't let them predict your position." The battle became a deadly dance through the bunker's corridors. The humans used their knowledge of the layout, setting traps and ambushes. They fought like guerrillas, striking and moving, never staying still enough for the swarm's psychic attacks to take hold. Through it all, Stone felt the alien presence trying to invade his mind. It was like a pressure behind his eyes, a whisper urging him to submit. He pushed back, focusing on memories of Earth before the invasion, on the faces of people he'd lost. The pain and anger helped him stay focused. Hours passed in a blur of combat. The defenders paid a heavy price, but they achieved their objective. Dr. Wilson and her team escaped with their research, humanity's best hope for survival. As Stone led the remaining survivors through the emergency tunnel, he knew this was just the beginning. The swarm might have taken their cities, but they hadn't broken humanity's spirit. And as long as that spirit remained, there was hope. In her high ship high above, Queen Iris felt something she hadn't experienced in centuries: frustration. These humans weren't just resisting. They were learning, adapting, becoming stronger. Perhaps it was time for her to take a more personal interest in this troublesome species. 3 weeks into the invasion, Stone stood in the hidden mountain training facility, watching his soldiers prepare for another mission. The underground complex, carved into Montana's wilderness, had become humanity's new training ground. Again, he ordered, as a group of fighters moved through the simulation course. They were learning to fight in ways that had never been taught before, ways that defied conventional military doctrine. Stone's mind drifted to his past, to lessons learned in countless guerrilla conflicts. 20 years of special operations had taught him that unpredictability was the greatest weapon against a superior force. Now those lessons were humanity's best hope. "Your movements are too structured," he called out to the fighters. "The swarm thinks in patterns. We need to break those patterns." Dr. Wilson approached, carrying new data on her tablet. "Commander, we've analyzed more combat footage. The swarm's reaction time drops by 23% when faced with completely random actions. They literally cannot process chaos as efficiently as we can." Stone watched as one soldier, Tom, successfully evaded a training drone by performing a series of seemingly nonsensical moves. The drone's targeting systems failed to predict his path, and its attack missed completely. "Our greatest weakness is actually our strength," Stone mused. "The swarm's unity is absolute, but that means they can't understand individual choice. They can't grasp true randomness." In the next room, other soldiers practiced mental resistance techniques. They sat in meditation, while devices simulated the swarm's psychic attacks. Some winced in pain, but they held on, growing stronger with each session. "The Queen's getting desperate," Dr. Wilson said, showing Stone new satellite images. "She's changing her tactics, committing more resources to finding us. Our resistance is affecting her more than we thought." Stone remembered his first encounter with the swarm's psychic assault. The pain had been incredible, but something in his mind had refused to bend. Years of combat stress had hardened his psyche in ways the aliens couldn't understand. "We're not just fighting with weapons," he told a group of new recruits. "We're fighting with our humanity itself. Every random choice, every individual decision, every emotional response. These things confuse and weaken them." The facility shook as explosions echoed from the surface. Practice immediately shifted to real combat readiness. Stone moved to the command center, where radar showed 3 high ships passing overhead. "Their searching patterns are getting better," an operator reported. "They're learning." Stone nodded. "So are we." He activated the facility's communication system. "All units, prepare for Operation Chaos. Remember your training. Think individually, act unpredictably. Every person makes their own choices. That's what makes us human." The plan was audacious. While the swarm expected them to hide, they would attack. While the aliens looked for patterns, they would create confusion. Each soldier would fight their own way, creating a battlefield so chaotic that the hive mind couldn't process it. In the armory, Stone checked his modified weapon. They had learned that the swarm's armor had microscopic gaps at its joints, gaps that could be exploited if you hit them at exactly the right angle. But those angles changed constantly, requiring fighters to adapt moment by moment. "Sir," a young soldier approached him. "How do you stay so calm when they're in your head?" "The pain." Stone placed a hand on the soldier's shoulder. "Pain is temporary. Fear is temporary, but the will to remain free, that's permanent. Focus on what makes you unique. Your memories, your desires, your anger, your love. The swarm can't copy those things, can't understand them. That's your shield." As they prepared for battle, Stone felt a familiar presence probing at his mind. The Queen was getting stronger, more focused in her attacks. But so were they. Every failed attempt to control them made humans more resistant, more determined. In her ship above, Queen Iris felt the strange emotions emanating from the humans below. Their minds burned with an intensity she had never encountered, each one a unique flame that refused to be extinguished. For the first time in her long existence, she felt something akin to doubt. The real battle was just beginning, and both sides were about to learn the true meaning of adaptation. Operation Chaos began at dawn. Stone led a strike team of 50 soldiers toward the nearest hide ship hovering over the Montana wilderness. The massive vessel hung in the air like a dark cloud, its surface rippling with biomechanical energy. "Remember," Stone's voice crackled over the secure radio. "No standard formations. Every soldier fights their own battle. Make them try to track 50 different patterns at once." The attack began with no warning. Soldiers emerged from hidden positions, each moving in completely random directions. Some charged straight ahead, others zigzagged unpredictably, while others seemed to dance through the battlefield. The swarm's response was immediate but confused. Warrior drones poured from the ship, their usual perfect coordination disrupted by the chaos below. They couldn't predict where to strike because every human moved differently, fought differently, fought differently. "It's working." Dr. Wilson's voice came through the command channel. "Their neural network is showing signs of stress. They can't process so many independent variables at once." Stone rolled under a drone's attack, firing at its joints with practiced precision. Around him, the battle looked like madness, but it was controlled chaos, each soldier fighting with individual purpose while contributing to the overall confusion. Inside the high ship, lower-level commanders struggled to coordinate their responses. The human attack pattern defied all strategic logic. There was no pattern to counter, no formation to break, no standard tactics to exploit. Queen Iris felt the strain through the hive mind. Her children's thoughts became fragmented as they tried to track too many independent threats at once. This had never happened before. All previous species fought as groups, followed predictable strategies. "Push through the main entrance," Stone ordered, seeing the confusion in the swarm's defense. "Each person picked their own path. Don't follow the person in front of you." The humans breached the high ship's outer hull. Inside, the organic corridors pulsed with emergency signals. Warrior drones rushed to defend their home, but the humans had spread out completely, turning the ship's interior into dozens of separate battlefields. Stone fought his way deeper into the ship, toward its neural center. The Queen's psychic pressure grew stronger with each step, but he used it as a guide. Years of resistance training had taught him to turn the pain into focus. "Sir," a soldier called out, "we found something. Looks like their central nervous system." The discovery was crucial. The high ship wasn't just a vessel. It was a living extension of the swarm's collective consciousness. And like any nervous system, it had vulnerable points. Stone directed teams to plant explosive charges at key neural junctions. The random placement of the charges made it impossible for the swarm to predict where the next blast would come from. Queen Iris felt each explosion like a stab of pain. Her connection to this ship, to thousands of her children, began to weaken. For the first time, she faced an enemy that couldn't be understood or predicted. "All teams, clear out," Stone ordered as the final charges were set. "Everyone choose your own exit route. Make them chase shadows." The retreat was as chaotic as the attack. Soldiers burst out of different parts of the ship, some using grappling lines, others sliding down hull plates, each creating their own path to safety. The high ship's defense systems faltered, unable to target so many independent threats simultaneously. As the humans cleared the area, the charges detonated in random sequence, sending waves of confusion through the swarm's neural network. From safe distance, Stone watched the massive vessel crash into the forest. It wasn't just a physical victory. They had proved that the swarm's greatest strength could be turned into a weakness. In orbit, Queen Iris felt the loss of the high ship reverberate through the collective consciousness. These humans weren't just resisting. They were learning to attack in ways that devastated the very foundation of swarm warfare. For the first time in her long reign, Queen Iris felt something new: respect, mixed with a growing sense of concern. Perhaps it was time to finish this personally. These humans, especially their leader, needed to be dealt with directly. Queen Iris stood in her personal chamber aboard the massive mothership, her iridescent wings trembling with barely contained rage. The loss of a high ship had shaken the entire swarm's confidence. More troubling were the ripples of independent thought beginning to appear in her children's unified consciousness. These humans, she communicated to her elite guard, have become more than a nuisance. They've become a threat to our very way of life. The Queen's chamber pulsed with bioluminescent light as she accessed battle data from across Earth. Everywhere she looked, human resistance was growing stronger. Their chaotic fighting style had inspired others, creating pockets of rebellion that the swarm struggled to contain. "Prepare my personal war form," she commanded. In 17 centuries of conquest, she had never needed to personally enter battle. But these humans, especially their leader, had forced her hand. Deep in her chamber, organic machinery whirred to life. The war form emerged from its growth chamber, a massive bioengineered battle suit that would amplify her powers and protect her during direct combat. Unlike the simple drones, this was a masterpiece of swarm engineering, created from the genetic material of 100 conquered species. As she merged with the war form, Queen Iris felt her psychic powers multiply exponentially. The neural amplifiers would allow her to project her will with devastating force. No individual mind had ever withstood her direct attention. "My queen," one of her commanders approached. "We've located their main base. The human leader is there." Satellite imagery showed the hidden mountain facility, where Stone and his forces had retreated after destroying the high ship. The Queen studied the defenses, noting how they seemed randomly arranged, following no logical pattern. "Launch the final attack," she ordered. "I will lead it personally." Across Earth, the swarm felt their queen's decision ripple through the hive mind. It was unprecedented. Queens remained safe, protected, directing from afar. But Iris had seen too many failures. These humans needed to be shown the true power of the swarm. In the mountain facility, alarms blared as sensors detected massive movement in orbit. Stone rushed to the command center, where screens showed hundreds of drop pods launching from the mothership. "They're coming in force," Dr. Wilson reported, studying the data. "But something's different. The psychic signatures. They're stronger than anything we've seen." Stone felt it too, a new pressure building in his mind, more focused and powerful than before. "The Queen," he realized. "She's coming herself." The facility erupted into activity. Soldiers rushed to defensive positions, each preparing to fight in their own way. They had learned that standard defenses were useless against the swarm, so each section of the base was designed to be defended differently. "All units," Stone broadcast, "remember your training. Fight as individuals. Think independently. Don't try to coordinate. That's what they expect. Make them fight 1,000 different battles at once." The first wave of drop pods crashed into the mountain slopes. Warrior drones emerged, larger and more aggressive than before. But among them strode something new, a massive, gleaming figure that radiated psychic energy. Queen Iris, in her war form, stood twice the height of her largest warriors. Her enhanced compound eyes scanned the human defenses, while her neural processors analyzed their seemingly random patterns. "Interesting," she communicated across the hive mind. "They think chaos will save them. Let them witness true power." The Queen raised her biomechanical arms, channeling psychic energy into a focused beam that struck the mountain. Rock cracked, and minds within screamed as her power tore at their consciousness. But still, resistance held. The humans' chaotic defense made it impossible to focus on any single point. Their minds, each thinking and fighting differently, created a psychological storm that even her enhanced powers struggled to penetrate. The final battle was about to begin. Queen Iris moved forward, her war form advancing toward the base entrance. Soon, she would face this human leader who had caused so much trouble. Soon, she would understand how these primitive beings had resisted her power for so long. The mountain base shook as Queen Iris's psychic assault intensified. Stone ran through the corridors, coordinating the defense while moving toward the inevitable confrontation. He could feel her presence getting stronger, a searing pressure behind his eyes. "Commander," Dr. Wilson's voice crackled through his radio. "Her psychic output is off the charts. No human has ever faced this level of neural attack." Stone rounded a corner, finding a group of soldiers clutching their heads in pain. "Focus on your memories," he shouted. "Think about what makes you human. Don't try to block her. Let your thoughts flow randomly." The Queen's war form smashed through the main entrance, her enhanced body filling the corridor. Drones flanked her, but they seemed almost unnecessary. Her presence alone was enough to make the air crackle with psychic energy. So, her thoughts invaded every mind in range. This is humanity's great defender. Stone stood his ground, letting his mind race through memories. Childhood laughter, battlefield horror, moments of joy, flashes of pain. A lifetime of chaotic human experience that disrupted her attempts at control. "Fascinating," Queen Iris projected, studying him. "Your mind, it refuses patterns. You embrace disorder." The Queen launched a focused psychic attack. Stone staggered but didn't fall. Years of combat experience had taught him that pain was just another sensation, fear just another emotion. He let them flow through him, rather than fighting them. "You don't understand us," Stone spoke aloud, knowing she could hear his thoughts anyway. "We're not just resisting you. We're being ourselves." Around them, the battle raged in complete chaos. Each human fought differently, their minds producing a cacophony of thoughts and emotions that disrupted the swarm's unity. Some soldiers sang while fighting, others laughed. Some fought in silence, each adding to the psychological storm. Queen Iris's war form advanced, its massive claws tearing through metal and concrete. "Your species will join the swarm," she projected. "Your individuality is a weakness to be corrected." Stone rolled away from her attack, firing at the joints of her war form. "Our individuality is what makes us strong. Every human is unique. Every mind is different. You can't control what you can't understand." The Queen's frustration manifested as waves of psychic force that made the air itself seem to ripple. But where other species would have crumbled, the human's chaotic resistance only grew stronger. Stone felt blood trickle from his nose as he fought against her mental assault. But with each attack, he understood more. The Queen's power came from unity, from perfect coordination, and that made her vulnerable to true chaos. "Your thoughts, they make no sense," Queen Iris projected, confusion creeping into her mental voice. "Each memory contradicts the last. Joy and pain, love and hate, all mixed together. That's what it means to be human," Stone replied, continuing his irregular movement pattern. "We're not simple. We're not logical. Every one of us is a universe of contradictions." The Queen's attacks became more erratic as she tried to process the flood of human consciousness around her. Her war form's movements grew less coordinated as confusion spread through the hive mind. Stone pressed his advantage, not with weapons but with memories. He projected every chaotic human emotion he could muster. The laugh of his daughter, the pain of losing friends in battle, the taste of morning coffee, the fear of death, the joy of life. Queen Iris physically recoiled, her war form stumbling as the assault of pure human experience overwhelmed her ordered mind. For the first time in centuries, she felt something she had forgotten existed. Doubt. "What? What are you?" she projected, her mental voice shaking. Stone stood before her, bloody but unbowed. "We're human. We're chaos and order, strength and weakness, unity and division, all at once. And you can't control that." The Queen's war form towered over him, its weapons ready to strike. But in that moment, something changed in the battle-filled corridor. The unstoppable force of the swarm had met the immovable spirit of human individuality, and neither would ever be the same. Queen Iris stood in her personal chamber aboard the massive mothership, her iridescent wings trembling with barely contained rage. The loss of a high ship had shaken the entire swarm's confidence. More troubling were the ripples of independent thought beginning to appear in her children's unified consciousness. These humans, she communicated to her elite guard, have become more than a nuisance. They've become a threat to our very way of life. The Queen's chamber pulsed with bioluminescent light as she accessed battle data from across Earth. Everywhere she looked, human resistance was growing stronger. Their chaotic fighting style had inspired others, creating pockets of rebellion that the swarm struggled to contain. "Prepare my personal war form," she commanded. In 17 centuries of conquest, she had never needed to personally enter battle. But these humans, especially their leader, had forced her hand. Deep in her chamber, organic machinery whirred to life. The war form emerged from its growth chamber, a massive bioengineered battle suit that would amplify her powers and protect her during direct combat. Unlike the simple drones, this was a masterpiece of swarm engineering, created from the genetic material of 100 conquered species. As she merged with the war form, Queen Iris felt her psychic powers multiply exponentially. The neural amplifiers would allow her to project her will with devastating force. No individual mind had ever withstood her direct attention. "My queen," one of her commanders approached. "We've located their main base. The human leader is there." Satellite imagery showed the hidden mountain facility, where Stone and his forces had retreated after destroying the high ship. The Queen studied the defenses, noting how they seemed randomly arranged, following no logical pattern. "Launch the final attack," she ordered. "I will lead it personally." Across Earth, the swarm felt their Queen's decision ripple through the hive mind. It was unprecedented. Queens remained safe, protected, directing from afar. But Iris had seen too many failures. These humans needed to be shown the true power of the swarm. In the mountain facility, alarms blared as sensors detected massive movement in orbit. Stone rushed to the command center, where screens showed hundreds of drop pods launching from the mothership. "They're coming in force," Dr. Wilson reported, studying the data. "But something's different. The psychic signatures. They're stronger than anything we've seen." Stone felt it too, a new pressure building in his mind, more focused and powerful than before. "The Queen," he realized. "She's coming herself." The facility erupted into activity. Soldiers rushed to defensive positions, each preparing to fight in their own way. They had learned that standard defenses were useless against the swarm, so each section of the base was designed to be defended differently. "All units," Stone broadcast, "remember your training. Fight as individuals. Think independently. Don't try to coordinate. That's what they expect. Make them fight 1,000 different battles at once." The first wave of drop pods crashed into the mountain slopes. Warrior drones emerged, larger and more aggressive than before. But among them strode something new, a massive, gleaming figure that radiated psychic energy. Queen Iris, in her war form, stood twice the height of her largest warriors. Her enhanced compound eyes scanned the human defenses, while her neural processors analyzed their seemingly random patterns. "Interesting," she communicated across the hive mind. "They think chaos will save them. Let them witness true power." The Queen raised her biomechanical arms, channeling psychic energy into a focused beam that struck the mountain. Rock cracked, and minds within screamed as her power tore at their consciousness. But still, resistance held. The humans' chaotic defense made it impossible to focus on any single point. Their minds, each thinking and fighting differently, created a psychological storm that even her enhanced powers struggled to penetrate. The final battle was about to begin. Queen Iris moved forward, her war form advancing toward the base entrance. Soon, she would face this human leader who had caused so much trouble. Soon, she would understand how these primitive beings had resisted her power for so long.